Hello everybody, my name is Tiffany, I'm the Tipsy Artist, and today we are going live to teach you how to paint a vintage pot with really beautiful roses and some feathers, all kinds of fun stuff. So let me go ahead and talk about the trace. We have this done first here. So I've got it all traced out, and let me show you the templates. So this is very helpful. We've got lots of fun templates with this package that we sell on our website. So a feather, a beautiful little pot, that heart shape, and then we also have a lot of really fun roses. So all different sizes there. Yay! All right, and then let me show you the model here. This is our inspiration. All right, so we've done this a lot in our painting classes. All right, and of course I'll have this posted on the website too, so you can always reference that as well. Okay, so when we do our tracing, I use all the templates that I have, plus I use a ruler to do some shiplap in the background. That's optional if you like that kind of thing. Hello, Sean. Welcome. All right, so we've got our shiplap done. We've got everything traced out. I do encourage you to use a pencil to start with. And then once you're comfortable with the placement of everything, then you can go ahead and do a nice little outline with a Sharpie. So that helps a lot too. And then on your roses, I do encourage you, a lot of people, want to have our templates. So you're welcome to do this. If you feel comfortable, if you're a little bit more advanced, so you want to go ahead and do the roses like I do, super simple too, but they're just basically like making little lumpy circles. So there's a lot of technique that I show you later on too that really helps make those roses pop and come out with all that beautiful pattern. All right, so I'm going to get started with all the background color first. So I'm going to be using my biggest brush here. So this is, look at our fun little brushes here, but I'm going to start with my biggest brush. I call this brush Mama. These are my two little kiddos. This is little Buddy and little Bit. But I'm going to start with Mama here. And I am going to mix up a big dollop of the white. Big amount of white. And then just a tiny little touch of the gold. Tiny amount on that. And that is very optional. The main color mix here will be a teeny tiny amount of black. So that will make a really light gray. So really pretty light gray, and then if you want to warm it up with an optional golden color, we've got a little bit of gold here off to the side too. Also, if you're using our painting kit, then you can also just barely touch in a tiny amount of the primary yellow with that as well. And that will warm it up to a little bit more of a taupe color too, so that's a nice look as well. All right, so we've got a big dollop of white, tiny little touch of the black to keep that really light gray. And then either a tiny little touch of the gold or a tiny little touch of that primary yellow to kind of warm it up just a little bit. All right, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just sweep this back and forth in the background here. And it's okay to go ahead and do a little bit of overlap over the pot, that's all right. I'm trying to keep this part of the process as relaxing as I can. Keep it very therapeutic, so I don't want to worry too much about trying to be too precise with it all. And since I do have it done with Sharpie in the first place, then that helps me relax a little bit through that process. And so I'm going to go ahead and start to lay this color here on the side. As I go, I like to do a little bit of mixing on top of the canvas. Hello, Larry. We're going to come see you tomorrow. Get my hubby's haircut. All right, so I'm going to lay this paint over here on the side and then go ahead and touch into a teeny amount of white here. This is that nice pretty mix that actually happens on top of the canvas here. Because I do actually want a little bit of that white to really show as a layer on top. So I won't pre-mix it, or else it'll just mix in with everything else and you won't see it anymore. Hello, Cindy. So I'm going to go ahead and lay down some of that taupe color, and then while the paint's still wet, then I go ahead and dip into a little bit of that pure white. Use a really gentle hand, and then lightly place that white over the top of the canvas. And as you can see too, I'm holding my brush parallel to the canvas as much as possible. Hello, Donna. Welcome, everybody. So this way, it'll give you that really gentle hand. So when you do hold your brush more parallel to the canvas, it does feel a little bit awkward, but actually that's what helps. That's what helps give you a really gentle hand. So it really does help you. All right, so I'm going to continue kind of sweeping this on, horizontal strokes. Got a little, yeah, that was like a little hair or something. I've been known to do that. I have this big mop of hair. So like, yeah, it just gets everywhere. Crazy. All right, so here we go. We're going to continue sweeping this on over the top. Coming in with that color that we mixed first. Now that color again is a whole lot of white, tiny amount of black. So that's going to be our first layer. And then I want a little bit of that white highlight to touch in over the top. So without cleaning off the brush, then we'll go ahead and touch into a little bit of white and sweep that on over the top. I finally got around and I just had to see your beautiful face. Oh, thank you, Larry. I hope you're getting some rest too. You and I were up early this morning. I got up at about 2:30 a.m. this morning. I don't know what's wrong with me. So I had a lot on my mind, lots of fun stuff in my mind. And then it turns out that by the time I got down here to my computer, turns out Larry was awake on Facebook too. So we just, you know, started to chat it out. We thought, well, you know, there was only, I was trying to think, I only saw 2 people awake, and it was me and Larry and a guy I know named Bruce Buckner. And yeah, I don't know what we were doing. We need to go to bed, get some sleep. All right, continue pushing this paint on in a horizontal stroke. And again, you can see how I'm just kind of sweeping it on over the top of the roses. That is okay. I'm just trying to relax again with this process, trying to get my therapy in, so I'm not too worried about covering that up. And I also know that my Sharpie will peek through that paint, so I can just relax with the process and just kind of sweep that really light gray all the way through here. And again, that light gray is some white, little teeny tiny amount of black, and then keep your hand really light by turning that handle more over to the side. Again, just kind of sweep it back and forth. I'm going to get good coverage in there because I do want to make sure that I have the background of that shiplap showing behind all the flowers too. I want to make sure I've got good coverage there. So I'll kind of touch in a few little spots here and there just to make sure that there are no empty spots. Because we'll fill in all those pretty roses here in just a moment. And then that will all start to make sense again and come forward. All right, so a few little light touches here. I'm going to come back, and sometimes what you need to do with your paintings, it's really helpful to take a step back away from it, take a look at it, and just see what else it needs. So in this one, I'm going to go ahead. I notice I've got a little spot here missing. I also have to stand back a lot because I have a lot of glare with the film lights. So sometimes I don't see things really well close up. So then I have to kind of push back a little bit, and then it helps me see a little bit more of what I've missed maybe. Do a few more white highlights up here at the top. Again, just a real light horizontal drag all the way across the canvas. All right, so we've got a really nice foundation now. So that's all my background. That's going to be my first step. Now the next step that we'll do will be the turquoise base. That's that beautiful turquoise color that happens in this old vintage pot. It's going to be really fun because we're also going to push in a few other mixes of some color that will run through it and look like it's a little bit rusty and throughout here. So that's going to be a fun little technique to learn as well. All right, so I've got my mama brush off in the water. Let me show you my water. can just have a little tub of water nearby. Red Solo cups also work really well, so nothing fancy. All right, so I'm gonna dry my brush off. You do want to make sure that you don't have any excess water on your brush before you paint, especially if you're doing it in a vertical position. Now, if you do hold the canvas flat, I've been trying to tell people this more lately, because a lot of people are working with it on a flat surface, then you have a lot more freedom to actually have water in your brush and in the mix of the paint. It does help extend the paint and help it be a little bit more fluid on the canvas, but really important to lay it completely flat so that it doesn't have any, you don't get any water runs that happen on your canvas. All right, so I'm gonna start to mix up some turquoise here. So I've got a clean, dry mama brush, and I'm going to pick up a dollop of the white, and then a dollop of the green, and then a dollop of the blue. All right, so I'm gonna mix all this together. So this will give me my beautiful turquoise color. Blue, green, and white. All right, so that's gonna be my base. Now, I always wanna make sure that I've got some other fun colors to work into this mix later, but I don't wanna pre-mix it or I'll just get mud. So this will make for some fun little light highlights we'll push through in the mix later. But I do wanna make sure I've got some gold nearby, or a little bit of that primary yellow, or a cadmium yellow from our kit. Also a bit of white and black, which will make gray. So we'll work on that here in a moment. But now we've got our turquoise, again, blue, green, and white. So I'm going to go ahead and push this into the shape of our old vintage pot. So I'm going to start with the line edge first. So I've got my mama brush, and I hold it just like you would hold a pencil, and this will give you a nice thin line edge that comes around that shape. Add a soft little curve there. I'll take this one all the way around too. Little curve. All right, we have some handles coming in here too, so I'm going to go ahead and still hold that brush like you would hold a pencil. Make those soft little curves here. It's kind of like making the letter C. Now I do want to be a little bit careful near this feather because the feather will have a lot of white in it. So I do want to be a little bit cautious coming in around that shape. So I want to preserve that white, and so I don't want to have anything too dark come in over the top. All right, now I want to do a little thin line, kind of working in and around this little feather here. Now at first, as you're working in these lines, we've got some tight spaces here that we're working in, and so again, hold your brush more like you would hold a pencil. This will give you nice thin line edges all the way around these shapes here. You will notice that it kind of digs into the paint a little bit and thins it out. So it's important to just do this for your first stroke, but once you get to a second stroke, then you want to go ahead and turn that handle back over to the side. And then that will help smooth it out and give you some better coverage over the top of that. All right, so I'm going to take this all the way around these little feathers here. And this is about, see, my little line ended here and here. So my pot will extend right up into about right there. This brush is getting to be a little bit big for that area, so I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my little bit brush here. Do a quick little twist into the paint. This will give me a nice fine point. See, I've got really tiny areas to work into. So I have to switch over to my little bit brush. All right, so we're going to work this all the way around here. Still have that pot extending again about right through here. So I don't want to miss any little sections, little tiny sections showing through. And so at first you have to hold a little bit more like this, again, more like a pencil. And then when you want to kind of feather out those little brush strokes, then you can go ahead and turn that brush just slightly over on the side and just kind of help feather that back out. Softly blend that back out into the background. Another option too for beginners is if you don't want to do all of this detail work in advance, you can go ahead and just make it a little bit easier on yourself and just paint straight through it with the turquoise. And of course I can do that here too if I want. I'm just actually still leaving those out in the open so you can see those will be leaves pretty soon. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of be a little bit more careful and go around those. But your Sharpie will show through, so you do have the freedom. If you do use a Sharpie, you have the freedom to go ahead and just kind of sweep right through it, and then you can come back over with more color in a little bit. All right, I'm going to put a little bit into the water for just a moment because we're done with our small areas. Then I want to get right up next to those edges as close as possible. Kind of feather these strokes back out a little bit, help softly blend that turquoise back into the background of the shape. Because I was seeing a lot of transparency happening and a lot of brush strokes. So I kind of needed to feather that out, smooth it out a little bit. Alright, so then I'm going to take this turquoise all the way around this shape here. This is the heart. And I am just painting over the lettering. That's okay, because I'll pick that back up later. We're going to go over that with some black later on. And again, just kind of feather this out. Flat side of the brush parallel to the canvas. If you want it to be a little bit more textural, kind of do like a little cross stroke where you make like little tiny X's. This needs a little bit of feathering in. Alright. Okay, so we've still got wet paint. This is key. So I want to make sure my paint's still nice and wet, easy to work into. And then while it's still wet, I want to get a nice soft blend with some of those other accent colors to almost make it look like there's a little bit of a patina on the surface. So I've got a little bit of this nice gold here, and I'll go ahead and kind of crisscross this back and forth into that turquoise. Just pretty random on that, and that's just like a pure gold color. Or you can use like a cadmium yellow on this too. And I'm going to do a little bit more here on this side. Just makes it look like it's got a little bit of old rust, old weathered look happening. And you really want to try to keep your hand as light as possible. So really try to hold that brush as far out to the side as you can. And just kind of do a little bitty crisscross just back and forth. Now I also want just a teeny tiny amount of the black and the white, but super, super teeny amount. I just barely touched into it. So just a tiny amount there. I'm going to kind of push that back and forth. Little tiny amount of the white. And as that mixes, you're going to get a light little hint of gray happening in there too. So just crisscross back and forth. And we're going to pull up a little bit more of that color up just the edge of this pot here. And I'm just kind of sweeping this back and forth, a lot of repetition, just kind of pulling it up. And I want to make sure I've got a nice soft blend out of this side here too. I don't want it to just have an abrupt ending of that texture happening, so I'm going to do a few more light strokes. And again, just lots of repetition on this. Little crisscrosses just back and forth. Okay, so I'm happy with that. Looks good. Nice soft blend, but then also a look of it being a little bit kind of distressed in there. Take a little look back. All right, happy with that. Okay, so now for more foundational work, I'm going to go ahead and start to work into, let's see, let's do the red here. Actually, it's like a hot pink. Let's do some hot pink. I'm going to put that mama brush in the water, and I need to pick up another mama brush. So I've got some white and then a little bit of red. Let's go ahead and mix those two together. It's actually a little bit darker than that in the model. I'm going to add a little bit more red to that. It's like a dark hot pink color. At first when I looked at it, I almost thought it was red, and then closer look, it was more of like a hot pink. So a lot of red in this mix and a little bit of white. And then I'm going to hold the brush like a pencil and then go ahead and work around this edge. Now ideally at home, I would recommend letting that have a little bit more setup and dry time so that you don't mix between these two colors, because they do not play well together and they will make a very muddy color, very kind of a dark color that's not really attractive. I'm just being very, very careful as I cut near the edge here. As I do the cut-in work, just being very careful to not touch into any of that turquoise. But if you do want to make it a little bit easier on yourself, just go ahead and just avoid that, and you can just let it set up and dry. So that'll make it a lot easier for you. Acrylic paint does dry pretty quickly. It's usually about 5-10 minutes on the dry time on that. All right, so we've got a good solid coat of that down. Now while we've got this nice mix of some of this pink, I'm going to go ahead and do some of these beautiful roses, since that is also the base that we have extending out through much of the floral bouquet here. So I'm going to touch into a little bit more white. And I want to go a little bit lighter this time. So a little bit more white, even more so. Add that into the red and make it a lighter pink. Again, I want to be careful with this one because we're getting kind of close to some of that. It's set up pretty well near the edge, thank goodness, but we do want to be careful and not pick up any of that turquoise. Now as we paint into the roses, again, they're going to look like big, lumpy circles. So that's okay, don't worry about that, because we're going to make them look like beautiful roses again with a really cool pattern technique that I'll teach you. So for right now, you want to go ahead and do your cut-in work by holding the brush like a pencil, soft curves on that, and then we'll come back in and sort of feather it out, do a nice soft blend over the top. And if you want a little bit of some like coral mix in here too, you certainly can do that. I can touch into a little bit of that orange, mix that into the pink. That also makes it really pretty. See how pretty that is? That's a really nice look. So you can add a little touch of that in there too. It's kind of a nice peachy look that happens. So I'll go ahead and work that all into that surface area and then feather it out all the way over the top. All right, more white, light pink, and then we're going to go ahead and do this one really light too. And I'm about to come in with some purple. So that'll be really pretty. We'll start with like a base of some really pretty lavender. All right, beautiful light shades there. Now let's go ahead and shift gears to our really pretty purple color. Ooh, oh yeah, I was gonna squirt this out. Okay, so this is a good example of what our paint looks like. We have a whole set that comes with a kit. Yay, okay. So I've got some violet here. Honest disclaimer here on paint, when I'm using all the small amounts, they tend to last me, oh gosh, sometimes 2, 3, 4 paintings, so I get really good use out of them. What I do run out of quickly is the white. I just use a ton of white, sometimes a lot of black, so I encourage people to sometimes get a backup of those two shades in a bigger size, and you can get that pretty much anywhere at Walmart. Just, you know, like when those little folk art paints, just have some backup white always nearby, so that helps. All right, so I've got my mama brush here, and this is actually a really pretty violet color, so I'm going to go ahead and push just a little bit of the white into that so you can see how pretty that is. Really pretty purple color there. So that'll be my base. All right, so I still have a few little small circles. Again, these will be roses, I promise. And just kind of lay the color on flat over the surface area. Let's see, anything else? I think I've got it all. All right. Sometimes I change my mind, I do a few more here and there, but let's do a little baby one right there. And I don't want it to be too perfect, so I try to make it a little bit lumpy. And see, that actually gives it more of a look as like a real rose there. It's still abstracted, but it just is a little bit of a subtle hint towards looking a little bit more like a real life rose. All right, so we've got a really great foundation now. Okay, so while the paint's still a little bit wet, I like to have a soft blend into that color. So I'm going to use my little bit brush here. Let's see, let's get this one. All right, so a little bit, white paint. We're gonna do that first layer of color over every rose here. So I'm gonna push into the white, just like that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of lay that brush over on the side and do a nice light drag over the surface area. Little half circles. Kind of wiggle the brush a little bit too. You don't want this to be too perfect. And push these in little half circles all the way around that really pretty little rose. And this one too, little half circles. And just keep working that in. Just a lot of repetition here, same pattern. Little half circles. And we'll actually do this on all the roses, even regardless of what color's down. White's going to be our first layer. And you can already kind of see how this is starting to make a really pretty little rose shape. It's already starting to emerge. And you just keep doing those little half circles until you basically go into the center and then you just run out of room. So here as well, little half circles. All the way around. One more here. I've got all the pink ones after this, and I'll work on the little lavender ones. Now lavender. Same thing. These are a little bit smaller, so I have to be a little bit more light-handed as I do this. Little tiny half circles. And we'll just keep working this all the way around. Okay, I think I have them all. All right, it'll pop out at me later if I don't. Okay, so that's gonna be the first layer. Now what we wanna do is come in with the darkest color next. All right, so a little bit brush again. On the pink roses, I'll do red as the darkest color, so we want to create the shadows that come in now. So a little bit brush, dark red paint here, just like that. And I'm going to make a little spot, and I do a little bit of a push, light drag, and then lift off with a light hand. So a little bit of a push, light drag, and then lift off with a light hand. So I'm going to do those on all those little shapes. That's the first step. Some people like that to be the only step. They just want that, minimal look. I have just a few more shadows to this. Still pretty minimal with this. I'm not nearly as heavy-handed with the darker shadows as I was with the white. So I'm going to take that brush, I'm going to do a little twist into the red, and then I'll just kind of lightly pull this through. Kind of lightly drag the brush on the side. Take this all the way around. Again, just a few little strokes of this darker color, this little shadow. I'm also enjoying the soft blend with the white. just do these on all of them here. Now you can also add a few other little accent colors as well. I think that's a really lovely idea. So I'm going to show you a little bit of that too. But I want to get this first pattern down. All right, so other accent colors, let's go ahead and talk about this. I'm super minimal with this. Again, tiny little accents here, but the little bit brush. And I think it's fun just to add little touches of like maybe some bright primary yellow. And I just add a few of those. Just little touches. And I do a little tiny wiggle with the brush, just a little bit. You can also do maybe a little bit of orange, just a little hint of that. That definitely gives that look of that coral happening. A little bit here. A little bit of orange here. Awesome. Okay, so now we need to work on the purple roses or the lavender roses. So I need to come in with the darkest color now, which will be that really beautiful violet color. So let's see. Nice, clean, dry brush here with my little bit. I'm going to go ahead and do a little twist here into the violet, into the darker part of the violet though, without as much white. I'll get a nice fine point. And then I want to go ahead and do a little spot right there in the center, that fun little drag, and then lift off with a light hand, and then just do a few of these little half circles. Oh, thank you so much, Bobna, and welcome. Hello, hello. I hope everything is beautiful in the UK right now. It is very hot here in Guthrie, Oklahoma. We have a week of, it's been glorious here, and we have a week of about 100 plus temperatures for like a whole week straight, so we're getting prepared for that. It's going to be interesting. I encourage everybody to stay home and paint. So, stay cool, paint. All right, finishing touches there at the very end of this little rose. Beautiful. Okay, next up we want to mix up, actually, you know what? I want some of my little shapes to almost look like little purple feathers. So before I let go of this, I was about to put this back in the water, but I'm going to go ahead and do those now too. So I've got a little bit of this mix of some beautiful violet and some white. Heat wave, rain, lots of wind. Yes. Yeah, same. Thank you so much. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do a few of these really pretty little purple and lavender. It's almost like a leaf shape, but it kind of evolves into what looks more like a feather now that I've added the colors purple to it. So I'm going to have that come through here too. We'll do a few of these before I go on to the greens for all the leaves. All right, just kind of touch into that. And let's see, do I want any more of these? Yeah, let's do one down here. And with a little bit of pattern, let me show you what you can do too. This is my little bit brush. So I'm going to do like a little line, little diagonal line, another little diagonal line, and then I'll make more diagonal lines off of each side of this. Same thing here. And I want a little bit of some white accent there. So I'll do the very same thing. So it does a little soft blend. Kind of touches into what we just did, but a little slight mix of that white paint into the lavender is happening now, so it kind of makes it pop out to the front. And then I'll add a little bit of some white accent here, a little tiny line that'll come right through the center. And then let's do a little outline with white here too while the paint's still wet, so you get a nice soft blend on that. Got too much purple. I want more of a strong white outline around here, so I'm going to go ahead and do a quick little wipe. I'm going to hit my paper towel a little bit here too. Then I'm going to go into that white, so it'll be a little bit more prominent over the top. And I'm going to bring that to a fine point. And then I want just a few little diagonal lines here coming through on the side from that center line. Do about the same thing right over here. Little outline, center line. All right, so nice little accent there. All right, so now let's go ahead and move on to our really pretty greens. All right, so what we'll do is we've got some green and some white, and I'm going to scoop up some yellow, primary yellow. All right, that off into the water. All right, so I've got some really bright primary yellow mixed up, some bright green, a little bit of white. Gonna mix all those together. Definitely want this really bright, almost lime green contrast happening here. So that's gonna look really pretty right next to the turquoise and with my really bright bouquet here. So you can make some that almost looks minty, and you can make some that just looks almost like a really vibrant lime, almost there. All right, and then you want to make sure your brush doesn't get too thick, so you want to do that quick little twist into the paint. That'll load it up, but twist it out into a nice fine point. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and fill into all these little leaves. So I've got lots of leaf work to do. And the basic pattern here on the leaf, you want to tell your brain it's like making a parentheses, soft line there. Parentheses on both sides, and then they connect on the end. I'll just go ahead and fill this in. Got more here. Again, just like a soft parentheses. And you can also kind of drag it out on the end to a nice fine little point too. So I've got a few that are kind of peeking through here. These little fun little leaves here, and then I've got my center line. There's that stem. I want to make sure they connect to the little stem. And you can almost do like little quick, like almost a little pounce there, and like to fill in so that you don't have any white space in the middle of your bouquet, because that would literally all be kind of filled in with greenery. So you can do little touches. Wonderful. Oh, I've got some more. I forgot I did some of this pre-trace in the beginning, so I've still got a little bit of that remnant coming down over the top of my little vintage pot here. So I'm going to do a little stem that comes down, and then a few more little leaves here. Then bring it out to a nice fine point. Got a little baby stem over here, little tiny leaves. All right, looking good. Now I do want a little bit of a highlight coming in around this. So you can either mix in some cobalt blue, or with our kit we have this really pretty color. I love it so much. It is called Viridian. So it's very bold. It has a beautiful shade to it. Kind of looks like just this incredibly majestic teal color. So I can actually just go right into it. I do want to remove some of the excess paint, but see, there's that Viridian color. It's really pretty, so I'm going to go ahead and twirl into that. And this is going to make a really pretty accent around all my little leaves. So it really helps define them, make them pop out over to the front of the painting. See how it's just a really lovely little accent? And it's not as harsh as like a black. So sometimes I use black because I do want some of that style happening, but I did want this to be a little bit softer. So just little soft accents. And you know, you kind of want them in the same color family, at least I did in this one. And you can also do quick little pounces in between here. Basically, I just kind of barely tap on the canvas in the middle of the bouquet to kind of help fill that in, give it a little bit of some fun texture. And I'm doing that with that really pretty Viridian color. I've got lots of little accents in here. Got my little stem that'll come up. Do just all the way around all these. You can also make little tiny lines through them too, so I'll give you an example of that as well. So like in some of these, well, I did one there too. So you can do a little line if you want. And then I think it's kind of fun to do a few little diagonal lines off of that line. So here we go, little diagonal. It's a fun little pattern. A few little pounces here and there. It's really coming along now. It's looking really pretty. We definitely want to make this green pop out over the top of this turquoise because it's a little bit too softly muted. So this Viridian makes a really nice pop of contrast between those two. So a little stem, little leaves. Yay! Okay. Whoops, I'm missing. There we go. And let's pounce a little bit. That texture. All right. Yippee! Okay, so next we're going to do our little feathers here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll do a light coat of just a super, super light white over the top with maybe just a hint of cream. Really subtle. And I'm going to use my little buddy brush here. All right, so little buddy, and then maybe just a teeny tiny amount of the gold. Super, super light, big amount of white, teeny tiny amount of gold. It's almost just going to appear white still on the canvas. Little buddy brush, and then I'm going to go ahead and work into these feathers here. And then a few little feather strokes come out on that side. And the good news is too, with the templates, if you need to, You can always let it set up and dry and come back in with the templates later and do a nice little line over the top and fill this in. And if you're having a hard time getting coverage in the beginning, I would recommend using maybe like a gray as almost like a, there's a word I'm looking for. It's like a, well, it's a base, it's a foundation. Primer, that's the word I was looking for. I was thinking, there's a word, I can't think of it. So, little story, I painted kitchen cabinets many years ago, and I wanted them to be called, it was Ralph Lauren Dressage Red. It was a beautiful color. And I did not prime the cabinets first, and the cabinets looked very streaky and hot pink. It was tragic, and I wasted so much money, and it made me really sad. So I went back to the store, and I told them what I did, and they said, yes, someone should have told you that you had to have primer. So I needed, turns out I need a gray primer, and that's what I should have painted all the cabinets with first, and it worked like magic. And the cabinets look beautiful from then on. And then that's something else I recommend with people. If you're having a hard time getting really good opaque coverage with red, you can always do, you can prime the canvas first with some gray, and that will help you have really opaque covers over that, over the top. Especially with any of those jewel tone colors that tend to be a little bit transparent. All right. Beautiful feather, very creamy, very pretty. Now we're going to come in with some beautiful brown over the top. All right, if you are mixing this, then what you'll want to do, I'm going to give you a visual on that. Do I have brown out? Oh, I do have brown. Let's see, I'm going to go ahead and get some brown out with my paint. But I'm also going to show you how to mix brown too. So this is a helpful little thing. All right, so we've got some cadmium red. I'm going to push some of that off to the side here. And then a little bit of black. All right, so cadmium red, little touch of the black. We're going to mix that together. And you can see it starting to turn it to brown. You can adjust this. Almost goes rust at first, and then it will go to a dark brown here. So the more brown, the more black. Yeah, the more black I add, the more it will take it to this really dark kind of a teak brown, really pretty. So let me give you a close-up on that. You can definitely see how that's becoming brown. All right, quite lovely. So that's how we mix up brown. All right, I am going to, oh, by the way, using our paint kit at home, I would definitely let all of this white set up and dry first. You don't want that white to blend into this mixed brown because it'll start to go mauve on you. It's going to pick up those red undertones. So you don't want to mix those two. So let it set up and dry, and then you will absolutely be safe doing little stripes of this really beautiful dark chocolate brown just over the top. So I have to work pretty quickly, so I'm going to go ahead and use just a regular out of the tube brown so that it does maintain that lovely brown quality over the top. So there's my brown here. It's pretty standard. There it is. Here's a little buddy brush, and I'm going to push this into the surface area. Little stripe up here at the top. And as I work this, I'm going to do a few of these little feather strokes. And I did a pre-trace of the little stripe here to begin with, so I'm actually just working into that, using that as my guide. Not wanting perfection on this. I don't want perfect stripes. I definitely want it to be kind of loose and wave, just a little bit of a soft wave to each little stripe. And we'll keep going all the way down to the very bottom here. All right, it's looking good. We're getting there. All right, so here we go. We're going to do this one here at the top. Do a little tap, tap, tap as I blend into that bouquet area there. Same thing here, a little tap, tap, tap. A little bit of shadow happening. And then when I start these little feather strokes at the top, they're little tiny diagonal strokes, just like that. And I do want to make sure that the end of my brush is nice and thin so that I can do that, just like that. All right, and a little bit of brown here. And take that all the way across. And here in a moment, we're going to do that center line on these, and that will really make it pop more like a feather here in a second. But I will add a little bit of black to that. Definitely want that to show up over the top. All right, now a little touch of black, so barely touch into that. And then we're going to go ahead and make that center stroke right down the middle. Again, it can have a little bit of wave to it. Now my brush was getting very filled with paint, so it was making the bristles kind of spread out. So I needed to go ahead and do some firm pressure. Back and forth. That gets it out to a nice thin point. So now it's good to go. And then I'll do light little outlines around the edge here. Still adding just a little touch of black with the brown. This gives a nice little outline. And then a few of those little feathering light wispy strokes right up here at the top. A little bit of a pounce, pounce, pounce. Kind of help make it integrate into the rest of the bouquet. All right. And then remember to sometimes take a step back so you can see it better. Know that you're happy with the way everything is looking here. All right, so we still have our lettering to do. It's a little bit hidden in here. And of course, I recommend, highly recommend, so much easier, let it completely dry, come back in with your Sharpie, firm up those letters afterwards. I am going to go ahead and paint mine on. And I've got my little bit brush here and some black paint. If you do use a little bit of water to make the paint more fluid, again, just remember that you go ahead and turn that canvas completely flat on the table. And sometimes that really will help create that nice definition around the letters in really small areas. But you just can't place the canvas in a vertical position or you'll get a water run typically. So I need to be careful and not have too much water, so I'm really careful about just making sure that my bristles are just moist. I'll do a quick little twist here into the black paint. That gives me a nice fine point. And then I'm going to follow along with my lettering. I can still see it. Also, another little helpful hint is anytime you have a loop, like I definitely have a loop with the L, or the O or the E, take that brush and make sure you go around the loop, around the line, because if you come into the inside of the loop, normally you'll close up the loop and you'll lose the loophole. So let me give you another example of what I mean. So I've got this O here, so I'm going to make sure I come around that O, around the outside of it, so I don't lose it. That way it still maintains the hole on the inside. Connect that. Got our little V down here. This comes back up for the top of the V. then again there's a little hole there for the E, but I was real careful to kind of go around it so I can still see the little inside, the little hole right there in the E and the O and the L. Alright, so there's our beautiful word love. Alright, let me make sure, I want to make sure we've got, oh, okay, we still need a little bit of the shiplap work. Now, you can leave it just the way it is because it is kind of subtle when you see these little Sharpie lines. Just kind of barely, you know, doing a little peekaboo behind that gray paint. That is actually really nice just the way it is, but if you do want to reinforce that just a little bit with a little bit more of a textural effect, we're going to teach you how to do that. So that would be using a flat line of a brush. So I want my mama brush here, because I definitely want to let the long line edge of the brush help me. So I'm going to apply firm pressure into the white first, a little bit of that black, push that in there. I basically want to get a nice charcoal color, darker charcoal color here. All right, check your edge. See how nice and thin that is? That's exactly what we want. So firm pressure accomplishes that, and I'm just pressing back and forth into a little bit of white and a little bit of black, and that gives me charcoal. And then I can go ahead and just follow along here. This helps make this pop out to the front. Now I may not be able to get all that. I'm gonna do one tiny little touch in there. That was a little tricky. You should probably use Little Buddy. I would say beginners use Little Buddy to get into that little tiny space. I'm just going to do a quick little tap. I'm using the mama brush. Little tiny line right there. And then another one right here. All right, wonderful. Okay. So the only thing, I'm still kind of wanting to see my roses kind of pop out to the front just a little bit more. So I want to come back in with my little bit brush. And I want to do a little bit of some darker red, just a little bit more. I feel like I'm losing a little bit of that accent. Just want a little bit more of that happening. So I just barely kind of wiggle it. Light little half circles here. And to me that just kind of makes them pop out to the front just a little bit. Gives a little bit more of that depth and shadow. So like a half circle line, but a little bit of a push and wiggle as I go. A little bit of that push and wiggle. Alright. Yay! I just put turquoise right in the middle of that. That's okay. I'm going to go over that with a little more red. Way to go, Tipsy. Actually, I'm just going to let that work for me. That's my saying, there are no mistakes, only possibilities. So I can push in a little bit more white. That's the thing too, if you do get a little bit carried away with some of the darkness, you can always push back in more white and just kind of re-blend it a little bit. So lots of possibilities there. All right. Love, love, love. Loving the way it looks, all of it, super awesome. Now we can also do a few little white accents here and there too. So make sure, I'm making sure I've got kind of doing a little squeegee with my brush, make sure there's no excess water. Tiny little amount of white. And then I want to go ahead and do like a little soft accent there on the handles. Gonna work in a little bit of a soft accent here with my turquoise, and then my white just one more time. Another fun thing you can do like a little wiggle like that in a little corner. So again, just a little wiggle. That's kind of an optional step. And little highlights here and there. I do a little bit of a highlight just right around the heart too. Kind of make that pop out a little bit. Yay! Okay, I think I'm done. Now I just need to sign my masterpiece. So of course, if you're at home, you want to make it super easy, you can use your Sharpie. Just make sure this is completely set up and dry. Wet paint will instantly kill a Sharpie, so we don't want to do that. All right, so I take my little bit brush and I'm going to go ahead and do a little twist into the black. There's no black. All right, because I do want my little signature to be contrasting. So a little rotation here. And if you do like water in the paint to help it be more fluid, helps with small details, again, just make sure your canvas is completely flat so you don't get any water runs. And it is a small brush, so sometimes you get a little bit of that dry brush thing happening. So you'll have to keep reloading the brush. Tipsy Artist, yay! Okay, all right, so that is it. We are done with our beautiful vintage pot with beautiful roses and feathers and greenery everywhere, so it's awesome. All right, so all the supplies for this are on our website. So let me give you a little visual here real quick again. We've got the little pot here and the cute little feather. And then of course lots of roses, different sizes, and then all the paint. And we do have a full set of brushes, all right? And then the canvas too, so it all comes with it. We have everything you need. And then I added some more fun stuff today too. We've got koozies, yay! So koozies, t-shirts, I added a bunch of fun stuff. Cowgirl hats, I added all kinds of fun stuff on our website, so check that out too. Love to have your support while we do all these wonderful videos for y'all. But thank you again so very, very much for joining us today. We look forward to visiting with you again super, super soon. So again, I come at you live just about 3 to 5 times a week, so you can always find me here on Facebook. So check the schedule on our website or on our Facebook page, and y'all have a beautiful rest of the day. Mwah.